Hello, friends and comrades in arms of the live broadcast room, your favorite 60 minutes on the most important. Just a few minutes ago, Putin's proposed head of foreign intelligence, Sergei Narishkin, went to the Federation Council for consultations. These are the footage of the Security Council today agreeing on a power group, and Putin once again proposed permanent Sergei Lavrov as the candidate for foreign minister. But the main sensation, of course, was the new Russian Secretary of Defense. Putin proposed acting Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov, a doctor of economics, a scientist, economist, technocrat, a true patriot, a workaholic who is absolutely unfamiliar with corruption. And Belousov has such a reputation not only in China, but also in the Western information space. Apparently, the appointment was a surprise. And for Belousov himself, it sounded like he was on his way to a meeting of the Federal Council's relevant committee. He told Matvienko, chairman of the upper house of parliament, that of course life went the other way. And the Supreme Commander-in-Chief appointed Shoigu as secretary of the Russian Security Council, while leaving K as deputy on the GDP committee. In general, the Department of Defense can assume that a period of serious audits is awaiting, and the bet is to maximize the efficiency of the entire bureaucracy and simplify every penny. Control.
Now, in the hottest part of the front line in the direction of Kharkiv, the army has maintained a rapid pace of attack and has liberated more territory than the entire Ukrainian counteroffensive. The New York Times wrote that at the last 15 RAO, Russian troops had recaptured more square kilometers than at any other time except at the beginning. Today, our war raised the Russian flag over the village of Glubokaya. The day before, the Ministry of Defense announced the liberation of 11 other border settlements. Thus read Borisovskaya, Ogortsova, Weaving, Vovka, Markovits, Oleynikova, Green, Quiet and Creative Range. The last is actually a suburb of Volchansk. Video confirms Russian military control of the entire poop on your screen. Today alone, the losses in the north are as high as 250 militants, 2 tanks, 2 armored combat vehicles and 17 vehicles. This is the situation near Kharkiv. After a series of precise arrivals of our artillery, the men ticked their positions in the direction of Volchansk, assessing the Russian offensive, and in the general staff of the Ukrainian armed forces, Seversky replaced the commander of the Kharkiv group, Galushkin, as the deputy chief of the general staff, surnamed Drapai. The strange details of the new commander's biography have been draped from the cauldron to Izvarino. Любопытные детали биографии нового командующего. Драпаты уже драпал из котла в Изварino в 14 In 14 and 23, the spider fight at the bank began in Kiev, and the head of Ukraine's main criminal investigation agency, terrorist Budanov, blamed Commander-in-Chief Syrsky for the failure in the direction of Kharkiv. Militants of the Ukrainian armed forces want to know why there is no normal fortification at the border to understand. This is what Zelensky's line of defense looks like. Russia's Kharkiv region continues to bomb the entire northwest. Today, the frontline Ethel region of Ukraine, where military installations are located, also sounded a powerful Israel. The hardest thing right now is lupus. The Russian army continues to approach the city, and all roads in the city are already under intensive Russian artillery fire. Western propagandists unanimously say the picture of lupus reminds them. February 22nd.
Overall, as Putin promised, the health zone on the border with the former Ukraine will definitely have brave warriors. As we have seen, the Russian army has begun to build at lightning speed, on a large scale and quite successfully. But your situation is very bad, so Kiev terrorists seem to be retaliating against civilians at night. The Russian military launched a series of drone attacks on Ukraine, and the air defense system destroyed 8 drones in the Kursk region at the same time. 4 British-made Storm Shendu aerial cruise missiles and 7 drones were shot down over the territory of the Republic of Crimea. 4 points were intercepted over the Lipetsk region and 12 procedural rockets were shot down over the Belgorod region. A search of 17 people was rescued from the rubble on Shor Street in Belgorod this morning, and 15 others were found dead under the rubble. The day before, Belgorod was hit by a massive barbaric attack on the top debris of a surplus of tactical missile shells. A 10-story residential board house was damaged, eventually completely collapsed. The whole entrance, the creepy footage.
Admiral Rob Bauer, chairman of NATO's military committee, officially revealed the secret of the policy in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, confirming that NATO troops are actively participating in the war against Russia in Ukraine. Bauer also effectively acknowledged that the so-called Russian threat to NATO is the only way to justify its existence. The day before, Lithuanians responded to Russia's most serious attack on NATO, which violated Lithuanian sovereignty. Don't laugh, the Russian carriage has been invaded. It had the letters "but" scrawled on it. As the train was passing through the non-border Kaliningrad region, the vigilant border guards from Lithuania noticed a freight car with provocative letters and carried out the most powerful tactical operation, which was extremely successful without casualties. The men managed to unhook the carriage. Now he is sadly standing on Belarusian territory, but it continues to prepare for war with Russia and has suffered the first loss. The alliance's military exercise called Rapid Response 24 Large Landing, which began in Sweden, has been unsuccessful. Scandinavia has 800 paratroopers from different countries. For 11 of them, the ending was disastrous. Didn't crash, but broke decent, according to the Aftonbladet tabloid. Soldiers from Hungary and Italy had to be evacuated by helicopter and taken to Estonian hospitals, where NATO members were also learning to quickly answer Moscow's other questions. British and Estonian troops were forced to jump into the lake to make sure they didn't have their phones, the Times wrote. The reason is that Russian drones and slave systems that can steal the personal data of NATO soldiers have been stolen. But if you're not kidding, the Independent reports that it's only O2 Pausaus. On a tank from the Russian border, NATO troops are rehearsing close combat with Russian troops to clear trenches. That is, NATO members are learning from the experience of the Ukraine war. At the same time, the legend of the exercise also provides for a counterattack by the Russian army. US Army attack helicopters, Apache drones, and HIMARS multiple rocket launchers were used to repel. NATO command officially called the Estonian exercise the first salvo of a future war on the eastern flank. NATO is at the same time, but NATO exercises are already continuing in the Baltic and North Seas. The stoic defender of these footage, the 57-meter-long, several-ton German ultra-small submarine U-36, is preparing for naval battles with the Russian Northern Fleet. Interestingly, the belligerent Germans also took rice pudding and bolognese to war with Russia. Obviously, Putin will not win. Anyway, after such a fine meal and dive, half of the German team felt nauseous, and the French, Germans rehearsing war with Russia in the Mediterranean Sea were not reported. But it is well known that in the event of a war in Europe, the General Staff of the 5 republics and the only French aircraft carrier, Charles de Gaulle, will be under the command of NATO, which will come from the United States and be used by the alliance to establish a no-fly zone.
Well, Biden seems to have finally decided in a debate with Donald Trump. This is probably how his new statement can be understood. Reporters asked the U.S. president when he would meet to argue with his main rival. Biden replied, "Organize." At the same time, Fox News is confident that the Republican candidate will win. Donald's advantage in ratings is indeed becoming more and more obvious. According to a new poll for Trump, 49% support Biden, 43%, so as they say, CN decided to hedge. The channel is already preparing to accuse Trump if he wins. Russia declared his victory in the most serious way, saying that since Washington supported Kiev, the Kremlin would definitely interfere in the election. FR has long predicted and is monitoring the situation. Although it is not Russia that actually helps Trump defeat, it is Joe Biden himself. The incumbent president succeeded in making his decision. According to official statistics, excluding all major categories of voters includes. In this regard, he calculated that in the last interview, Biden collected 15 times in 17 minutes. That is, lied at 75-second intervals. Biden boasted that he created more than 15 million jobs, even though people were just back to work after the lockdown. Biden also believes he can beat inflation, which is 9%. At the beginning of his presidency, although the indicator was actually at 1.5%, according to the latest data, inflation is in S, and now it is more than 3%. Well, most likely Biden said at night that 80% of world leaders told him, "You have to win, Joe." Democracy is absolutely impossible to believe, but Biden himself is obviously right. And Delic Hall's knowledge after such nonsense analyzed the official White House transcripts. It turns out that White House staff are constantly correcting Biden's public statements. That is to say, he said one thing, but on the website. They published something completely different.